staying free of the media. You know, I will rent an occasional movie and watch something that's totally fluffy because I cannot handle anything that's not. And but in terms of the, you know, I haven't had a TV for years. I don't even know what's going on in the world. That doesn't make me any less enlightened. Makes me less dense in a lot of ways. Makes me really dense in some ways because I don't know that there was an earthquake in China. But at the same time, I felt it. So during the last few weeks when I had such a hard time of, you know, whatever, feeling all this stuff, that's why my mom told me, oh, by the way, there was an earthquake and like hundreds of thousands of people died. And I thought, oh, okay. And when we're these really sensitive beings, which you are likely a very sensitive being or you wouldn't be here, we're going to sense all this. We're going to feel all this. And especially because we are all one. We are all connected, you know, on this web. And so when someone shakes up the web at one end, you're going to feel it at the other. So acknowledge that. So you're talking about a physical cleanse. We're talking about a body cleanse, but we're also talking environmental. We're talking emotional. But the difference between the emotional energy, now we're going to move into the emotional energy, is you do want to actually feel those emotions. Now, that is not my favorite thing. That is not something I do well. I can talk about, oh yes, I'm feeling very sad, or this was really painful. I can really put it out there. I do not like feeling it in here. I do not like feeling it anywhere near me, actually, unless it's joy. I don't do well with the other ones, but joy I can handle. And even that, sadly, I can only handle a little, you know, we also limit ourselves in joy. So with that same intense willingness that we've had to this point, you know, to invite your emotions to come and actually feel them. And if you can't feel them when you're supposed to, when the time and the situation happens, that's okay. Shelf them and say, I'll come back to you. But don't worry, because they'll come back to you when they need to. They'll come back around. And just being with it. Okay? So the other place that we're trying to do on a subconscious level that's, you know, kind of raising itself to the surface is we are trying to catch up with, I don't know how to put this in human terms, with the awareness of who we are. So here's what's happened. We have exponentially grown inside. We have just shifted huge. Okay? Now the physical part of us, the real 3D part of us, is trying to catch up to that awakened state. And so there's that sense of scramble, but there's also that sense of pure exhaustion. And so the analogy I use, I do have a newsletter I send out, and last week I sent out this newsletter suggesting that you do nothing. The idea was, the analogy was the baby. You know, babies are growing so much. They're using all their energy just to grow, that all they can do is sleep and eat. That's all they can do. You've just gone through this huge growth process within you over these past few weeks. So if all you can do is sleep and eat, be grateful. With babies, though, we give them permission. We don't say, oh, it's time for you to kind of like get up and do something. You know, we don't really have any expectations because we know this is their job. So all I'm doing is inviting you to see that right now this is probably the most important job you can do. Allow that contraction, allow that quietness so that you can find your center, breathe, and then gain clarity as you go back into the expansion. It's really hard. Now, you know, you can practice this. We do this in yoga sometimes, and it can work for a while. But practice just doing the exhale. You know, pretty soon my nose starts to run, my belly starts to get sore, I feel like I'm hyperventilating soon. You know, there's a pattern and there's a need for that at times, and it can be very cleansing. But really, the flow of life has the exhale and then the inhale. The outward giving and the inward receiving. And in our society, which is very doing masculine oriented, it's very hard for us to just do nothing. That's not acceptable. It's not getting us anywhere. It's not part of it. I'm inviting you, based on your own personal ability, to be in your rest, to take that time to be in that restful, quiet space so that you don't wear yourself out, you don't hurt yourself, you don't push yourself beyond and end up sick for a week, because that's what we do, isn't it? We push ourselves to the beyond, And then we end up going back because now we've had to make up time with the resting by actually getting sick. So really allow this quietness, allow this inward time. Another thing that we're trying to do, so we're trying to avoid the energy of being around denser negative energies, people that aren't serving us and people who just kind of are dragging on us, is at the same time that we're trying to avoid that, we also want to step towards and reach out to that support. And so that's that doula that I was talking about, the midwife that whispers, yes, you can. This could come in the form of going to a real therapist and having one-on-one. It could mean coming here and talking to people that feel connected. So there are many ways to meet those resources and those needs, but the important thing is that we do make those connections when we need to, so we don't feel alone. And I will end with this little bit, and I can answer maybe a question or two at the end here, but there is this other experience that if you haven't already experienced it, you are moving to this place, which is, I know many people who have very strong relationships with their spirit guides or their angels or Jesus or whoever they talk to. And what's happening as we move through this process of evolving, you're going to lose your guides. You're not going to feel connected. You're going to feel like they were talking to me and now I'm not hearing anything. And there's this intense loneliness. The good news is the reason that you're not connected is because you are becoming that. What we are waking up to is that we are, the I am. So first, one pit stop is being the guide itself, to merge with that essence of who you truly are on that level. And so it is frightening, and that's why you got to go back to the real people who can hold space for you to be vulnerable, to give you the advice, to hold that light for you and keep you hopeful, but also know that you're merging with your higher self. And that the next level of source, whatever you may identify, maybe it's an archangel versus an angel, who knows, will start to emerge again. But there will be a time when you're in that contraction phase that you don't feel connected. So what I see is that this is just a storm, and by finding the center of that tornado, we will get less marred along the way. But there definitely is a tornado, and it's by going into our heart center, taking a breath, going into that place, using these outward tools that will help us keep that centered feeling in spite of all of that. So does that seem to have answered just this general bigger picture and give you something kind of practical and tangible?
I'm not going crazy.
You're not going crazy. And the more that you have somebody remind you that you're not going crazy, it will help, because things are shifting. And it does feel very frightening, and so I'm totally acknowledging that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to integrate. We're no longer, the old way of becoming, the old way of enlightenment was to deny the matter, the body, to leave the human experience, to become that. What we are trying to do now is to integrate by allowing the wholeness, the feelings, the emotions, the physical humanness, and become all of it and allow all of it. And it really is an energy of allowing. It's not a doing or a forcing. It's like, oh yes, I am that. So you can have your addictions, you can have your fear, you can have your shame, you can have your anger, you can have all these things that we're not ready to uninstall. And you can also be this totally light being. And it's by integrating and getting all of it's perfect, all of it's lovable, all of it is holy, because you are a whole being, that we can find that perfection. And then in that is the freedom that we don't have to keep trying anymore. We can simply be that and become that and empower ourselves by claiming that. And so the last thing I'll leave you with is the more you can claim that verbally, outwardly, I am that in any one way, shape, or form, the better. Because then you start to set that cycle for implanting that new being.